We should be good.
Oh, there we go. I was just waiting on it. Yeah, I was just waiting before we get started. Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for being here tonight. This is a regular meeting of the West Virginia Rules and Bylaws Committee. This is August 24th, and we are starting this meeting at 6:41 p.m. And so I'll call the meeting to order. And the first order of business will be to do our roll call. Bob Baker. He has informed me that he cannot be here. He is traveling and not able to be here today. And we're missing Dottie. Dottie Berger. I'll text him because I expected him to be on here. So he is absent for right now. And Matt Halterman.
Present.
Thank you. Good to see you, Matt. Deb McCarthy. She told me that she would not be able to be here tonight. Maria Russo. She's not on here yet, but she is should be on here in a little bit. Judy Stevens.
Here.
Selena Vickers, I'm here, and Ray Whiting.
Here.
Ray is here. Okay, wait just 1 second. I want to text Dottie. Okay. All right. I'm going to just a second. All right, let me share my screen. And this is the draft agenda that was sent out. Is that okay? It could you look over that, and would there be a motion to accept the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of adopting the agenda as presented, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. All right, we have adopted our agenda. All right, and the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. These are our minutes by our new secretary, Dottie Berger, who we really, really appreciate. And that he did an excellent job. And these were sent out to you in advance. Are there any corrections to the minutes?
I didn't get them.
Okay.
So if you could let me kind of look at it. I'm sure everything's fine. Dottie did it, but I couldn't even open I had a problem with the agenda.
Okay, I apologize for that. Do you
it's not your, like I said, it could be operator error.
That's okay. That's okay. Do you want me to read them?
If you want to.
Okay. All right. So this is WVDP Rules and Bylaws Committee meeting July 27, 2023. Minutes and notes. Provides the YouTube link. Roll call members present: Deb McCarthy, Maria Russo, Judy Stevens, Selena Vickers, Ray Whiting, and Dottie Berger. Absent was Robert Baker, Matt Halterman, and others present: Katie Blount. This is a regular meeting of the Standing WVDP Rules and Bylaws Committee held virtually via Zoom. Meeting called to order at 6:35 p.m. Roll call, a quorum was established. Agenda, motion by Dottie Berger to approve the agenda as presented, seconded by Stevens. Agenda adopted. Minutes, Dottie Berger. Move to adopt the minutes of the June 22nd, 2023 meeting. Add that. As a correction. Seconded by Russo, minutes adopted unanimously. Election of secretary to fill unexpired term. Position had been noticed as required. Stevens nominated Dottie Berger. There were no other nominations. Dottie Berger was elected unanimously. Old business. Discussion of bylaws, section 3C, proxies. Following up on previous meeting, Vickers contacted the office of the West Virginia Secretary of State to determine if proxies need to be sent to SOS to be kept on file, and if proxies can be from multiple meetings. SOS's Nathan Martin said that proxies could be sent and would be kept on file, but it was not a requirement. The use of multiple/permanent proxies would be following party rules. The sense of the committee was to have individual proxies for each meeting and not to send a list to SOS. There would be no ruling as to what individual county committees could do. Article 5, Section 6, voting, non-voting chair. No action was taken as to whether a committee chair could vote who was not duly elected. In other words, elected from a Senate district. We will continue to wait and hear from absent members regarding 4 possibilities. Never vote, vote to break a tie, vote to create and break a tie, vote on all motions. Consensus: invite Lawrence Taylor to the next meeting. New business. Discussion of bylaws continued. Article 5, Section 9C, Resolution Committee. Vickers noted that this refers to resolutions to be made at executive committee meetings separate from the committee that function at the state convention. The Resolution Committee would meet 2 days before the executive committee to rule on, modify, or disallow resolutions at executive committee meetings. Issues raised: first, need a mechanism to bring a disallowed resolution to the floor if there is sufficient support outside the resolutions committee. And secondly, is 2 days sufficient time to carry out the procedure? Discussions will be continued. Next bullet, need a budget and finance committee. Next budget, Article 2, Section 6A, equal division. Add a new section to the effect that a person elected to a position by virtue of being one gender who later transitions should be permitted to retain the position unless removed for good cause or the end of term. Need to talk to Lawrence Taylor, Daniel Stewart, and or Rosemary Ketchum for appropriate phrasing. And I'm going to change that because I don't think we said Larry Taylor for that part of it. I think we said specifically Danielle and Rosemary. And next meeting is scheduled for, at that time it was August 10th. Meeting adjourned at 7:53, respectfully submitted by Dottie Berger. So I made 2 small corrections in that. So is there a motion to accept the minutes as corrected? If somebody said something, you might have been muted.
I move that we accept.
Okay,
Second.
great. Any discussion? And all in favor of accepting the minutes as corrected, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any
Thank you
opposed, please
for-
say nay. Okay.
Thanks for going over those for me.
Oh, my pleasure. It's a good reminder, actually, to what we did. Those are adopted. Okay, now let me just very quickly, so I don't forget. Okay, it's adopted, and also I want to make sure. Okay, great. All right, so the next thing on our agenda is moving on to the drafting document. And first thing that we're going to go over is Article Section 6A on gender-specific positions. So this is the section that we are looking at, this equal division section. Currently, the first part of it that we have is, we know that it is in line with, oh, here's Dottie Berger coming in right now. I just admitted him. This is basically very almost exact language from the DNC Charter and Bylaws. that all official state party conventions, committees, commissions, and like bodies shall be equally divided as practicable between men and women, determined by gender self-identification, meaning that the variance between men and women cannot exceed 1. Gender non-binary committee members shall not be counted as either a male or female, but the remainder of the committee shall be equally divided. And we were requested to address a situation where somebody was elected to a gender specific position had a gender change during that term, and how to address that. And we all agree, I believe, I mean, we've talked about this, but I feel confident in saying that we are in agreement that that person should be able to serve out that term. And then if the next term, they can rerun for a position that would be more in line with the gender that they identify with. But we didn't feel like we wanted to kick anybody out of a position that they were elected in, just simply because of their gender situation. So the two the language that we looked at was basically the first one is a member elected to a gender specific position may serve out their term in that position unless they resign or are removed for cause. The second one, and the only difference here, is a person elected to a gender specific position who transitions may serve out their term in that position unless they resign or removed from cause. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen just for a few minutes. I can figure out how to do that. And I'd like now to invite Rosemary Ketchum on. I don't know if you guys know Rosemary. Rosemary is a wonderful person that I developed a close friendship with over the last several years. She was the first female co-chair of the LGBTQ caucus when we were starting the caucuses. Her and Cody Thompson shared that position. She is the first transgender person elected to a public position. I think Stephanie Heck was the first to a party position, but Rosemary to a public position. She is a city councilwoman in Wheeling, and so I think some other people here know her, and we thought that she would be a great person to get her opinion on this matter. And so she has had this language, and the other person that I spoke with and sent the language to was to Danielle Stewart. So anyway, Rosemary, let me welcome you on, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Hey, Selena. Hey, everyone. This is like a little family reunion. I love seeing everybody here together. Thank you, Selena. Yeah, I reviewed some of the language. I think this is a really important and relevant conversation to be having. We've seen people transition in the middle of their elected or appointed positions, and there's always been a question or a conversation about what that means for the bylaws. I really love the language as it's laid out. The only flag that I actually have is the word transition, simply because there are people, I myself identify with the word transition. That was my process. That's my lived experience. But there are other people who might identify as non-binary, and that is not necessarily to them a transition in the kind of traditional sense of being transgender. And so, maybe that's semantic, maybe that's, not incredibly important, but maybe to add a little bit more flexibility, we pluck that word out, maybe add additionally a different word, or maybe it's good as it is removed altogether. But that's it. Other than that, I think it's really well written, and so long as that it aligns with the values and integrity of the national party and the state party, obviously, I think we're in good shape.
Thank you. And I'm sorry I didn't get this in here to you guys earlier, but this was when I shared it with Danielle. She threw out this language: a member elected to a gender-specific position, regardless of a change in gender identity after election, may serve out their term in that position unless they resign or are removed from cause. So that's another, I guess, option that we have to look at. So I wanted to make sure that you guys have that. Let me open this up. Does anybody have any questions for Rosemary? And Dottie, welcome. We got you down here on the roll call. All right.
I think you're muted. Dottie.
Oh. Dottie, you're muted. Here, let me see if I can, hold on, has to unmute. Does that help?
Yeah, no.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, I don't have my big monitor, so I'm stuck with this small little screen here. So I apologize. Yes, as I said, I got stuck behind a truck for about 20 miles and put me off. But for some reason, I thought this meeting was at 7. But so I'm late in any case. But anyway, apologize. I guess. I like the definition you last had, which is regardless of a change of gender identity, and I think that's suitable if that's suitable with Rosemary and the others. The reason I prefer of the two versions that you showed above, where the one says includes the word transition and the other doesn't. The reason I prefer the one that includes the word transitioning is if there is no change, then nothing changes, and there is no reason not to serve out the rest of the term. So something ought to be in there, and I'm perfectly happy with the regardless of change of gender identity instead of the word transition, if that's better for people.
I think that sounds great. I think that's a perfect compromise.
Any other thoughts from anybody else? Any other? And I know that that Rosemary is traveling, so she probably has maybe dinner to get to or something. So I don't want to keep her on here too long. But I would like us to take advantage of her time if anybody has any other questions for her.
So we are agreed to put in that phrase, the second phrase, instead of transitioning, have the phrase that we had. Is that correct?
Well, I think we'll have a discussion from people on, see where everybody's at, but I mean, that sounds like a good, I personally don't have any issue with it. I think that is good language. It covers what we want, which is to make sure that a person who does transition or changes their gender does not have to leave that position. And it also takes into account what Rosemary was sharing, that not everybody transitions, but maybe, if the conversation I had with her today, if somebody is non-binary, they're not really transitioning, but there is a change in gender identity. And I think that addresses that as well. Anybody else have any thoughts you want to share on this? Okay. All right.
Well,
go ahead.
I was just going to say thank you for taking on this conversation. I know it's important, and I think as the Democratic Party, I really appreciate that we're casting a wide net in a big tent here. I think it's really important. And I do have a couple martinis waiting on me, so I'm going to bid adieu. But anytime that you need me, Selena can share my cell phone number, or I can hop on a call anytime. I appreciate it.
We appreciate you so much.
Oh,
Take care.
thanks, guys. Bye.
Enjoy your margaritas or martinis, whatever you said.
Teeny.
Will do.
Not adult
Just like-
beverage.
Get it right, Selena.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye. All right, so is this, let me just ask a sense of the committee, because we like to do that. Let me have a sense of the committee on this language that is highlighted here, a member elected to a gender specific position, regardless of a change in gender identity after election, may serve out their term in that position unless they resign or are removed for cause.
I think that's a nice compromise.
Okay. All right. So Judy, you're okay with it.
Mhm.
Ray? Where do you sit with it?
I'm okay with it.
Okay. Dottie Berger?
I'm good.
Mac?
That's my preference of the two.
We don't have any others. Yep. All right. And I certainly like it as well. Okay. I don't think I missed anybody. Okay. Excellent. All right. All right. So the next thing that I want to go down to is this Article 5, Section 6A. Let's go down to that. Okay, here we are. All right. So just as a refresher, because there's a lot here, just anything in black is what is in the current bylaws.
Hey, you're not sharing the screen at this point, so we can't.
Thank you. Thank you.
I mean, it's all black from here.
Yeah. I got you. All right. So anything in black is what is already adopted by the state executive committee. Anything in red is what we as this committee have adopted, and we did most of this prior to the May 13th thing, but we pulled this section from consideration. So we approved it, but it has not been approved by the state executive committee. And because we pulled it, we wanted to do some work on it. And so anything in like this purple stuff is sort of like we haven't adopted anything, but we've poked around on, on things that we're considering. And so what we got very, very hung up on is the chair. And this is not the chair of the county committees. This is specific, the state executive committee chair. And this would take into account the language about the chair, if they would be duly elected, which means they would come from the state Senate districts or not, and whether they would be able to vote and when they would be able to vote, that sort of thing. It's also important to note for folks who have missed a couple meetings that we have, let's see, where is it? We adopted this language. Well, no, we didn't adopt. We have played around with this language. Right here, which is just above it. It's in the same section above it. That only members representing Senate districts who are elected in the same year as the organizational meeting and ex officio members, as provided in section, I just put X because I don't know what the section is when we were doing this, of this article, shall have the right to vote at the organizational meeting. However, subsequent members and officers elected at the organizational meeting will have the right to vote on all matters immediately upon their election. So we did that because we all agreed that we did not want old officers, outgoing officers, to be able to vote on the new chair and the new officers. That basically they wouldn't end their term. They would still serve, but only this new people elected would have the right to vote at the organizational meeting. So that we've all agreed on that. Okay, so except we come down here to the chair situation. So we discussed this. We could not come to consensus. It is the only thing that I have seen us really not be able to come to. We had like 4 different things that people wanted. The idea was to invite Larry, who's a registered parliamentarian. Let me just, but before we bring him in, just let me tell you a little bit what I know about him, although he could probably certainly tell more himself. But I met Larry through a group focused on Democratic Party reform, like many of us. He is on the state executive committee in Washington. He has been a national delegate, I believe, twice, and he's been on the DNC's Rules Committee, not the convention, the National Convention Rules Committee. He's a registered parliamentarian and does a lot of consultation with not only county committees and state committees, but also state committees on reform efforts. So anyway, and I think some of you guys know him through some of the work that he's done to support us. So Larry, let me welcome you and thank you for coming. And whenever I'm gonna stop sharing and just for a minute, you let me know if you want me to share again, but welcome.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here. I have roots in West Virginia.
Tell us about it.
I've just been doing genealogical studies, and the first ones landed in Pennsylvania, and then some of them migrated over to West Virginia, and I can't remember specifically. And I was going to look that up so I could run by you the location, but I've just been busy with other stuff.
No worries. Well, I sent you this this kind of like stuff that we're working on, and people might have questions, but I was hoping that you could give us an overview just on in general about this chair voting versus not voting, and just get your thoughts on it, and any advice that you have for us as we work on this.
So I couldn't discern what the controversy was. I did read through the language, and what you're doing is more generous than you need to be. So if you have a presiding officer that is not a member of the assembly, then there's no obligation to give them a vote, even in the case of a tie. And what you're proposing is that they vote in the case of a tie. And if that's what you want, if that's what your assembly, I think it's your executive committee wishes to do, then that's perfectly fine. But you are giving a vote to an outside person. And it's probably not, statistically significant, but it is a tie. So that's the slight difference that you're introducing here.
So
And if it's a tie, I'm sorry, if it's a tie, then the motion fails. It's not like the vote of the chair is being unable to vote is blocking something because of the tie. So if the vote is a tie, then it fails because you require a majority to pass something.
I'm sorry, I can't access the rules right now, but is the chair of the executive committee invariably an outsider or very seldom an outsider? Somebody refresh my memory on that.
Well, in West Virginia, as long as I've been aware of the rules, they have allowed for the chair. The chair does not have to be a member, like an elected member of the state executive committee. And in fact, I'm pretty sure, while we're talking, I'll look up 319, but I'm pretty sure this state law even allows you to pick somebody from outside of your committee to be the chair. It is the DNC. You do not have to be a member to be the chair of the DNC. I don't know about all states. Larry, what in Washington are you? What's the rule in Washington?
I'm in Oregon, and there is no rule that restricts candidates to be a member of the State Central Committee, which is our governing body.
Yeah.
So we could have
Sorry.
we could have a non-member of the State Central Committee run for presiding officer.
With respect, my question is slightly different. I was saying historically, in our case, has the chair been a member of the executive committee by and large?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I joined in 2014, and the chairs that have been since that period of time have all been members of the committee.
Yeah, Mike Pushkin, currently, he was elected from his district. Prior to that, Belinda Biafor was a member from her district. I don't know about Larry Puccio. Larry Puccio was before that, and I don't know if he was or not. So I don't know before Belinda.
Yeah, I came in as Puccio was leaving.
So it could be possible then to say that if the chair is by right a member of the executive committee, the chair could vote in the case of a tie. If the chair is not, the chair does not vote, period.
Yeah, Larry.
So that would be the way it's done, standard procedure. So if the presiding officer is a member of the assembly, then they vote in the case of a tie. If it's not a tie, then they don't vote if it's a visible vote. Yeah, so that's the way it would be done. So you wouldn't even have to have language making it clear.
I think given my druthers, I'd rather write it down just to make sure we don't have problems with it later. The other issue we had, as I recall, Selena, correct me if I'm wrong, was there was thinking that the chair could vote to create a tie and then vote to break the tie. And Larry, what is your reading on that?
Well, they only vote once, and so there's three circumstances that it's passing by one, that it's a tied, or it's losing by one. So if it's passing by one and they vote against it, then they've created a tie and it fails. If it's failing by one and they vote, then they've created a tie. And if they tie and then they vote, then it whether it wins or loses, it depends on the way in which they vote.
So in other words, they don't vote twice. Yeah, that's
no.
Yeah. So that issue should be off the table.
Well, the issue it's never been an issue that they vote twice. The current language in there is that the chair can, if they, and I think we're all in agreement that if they're a duly elected member, they can vote whenever they want to. If they are not a duly elected member, if we elect them as chair from outside of the group, the current language says they can only vote in the instance of a tie, to break a tie.
A duly elected member who is the chair. Yeah.
No. The current language says that if they are not a duly elected member, if we just pick them as chair, that the only time that person can vote is if there's a tie. That's what it currently says. And we may want to leave that. We may want to leave it that way. And Larry said that we're being very generous. We don't even have to do that. We can just say they don't get a vote, period. And if there's a tie, that just means whatever we're voting on fails.
Isn't there something in Robert's rules about that?
That's what Robert's rules would say.
Yeah, because I know in Wood County, I never voted unless it was a situation where there was going to be a tie.
Because you were the presiding officer.
I was presiding officer,
Yeah.
and I was elected to my position.
Yeah.
So I didn't vote unless it was something that was really important and I needed to. But that's Wood County. We did a lot of things different than most people.
Yeah, and that's okay because you're the member, but what you're doing here is that you now have a tie and you're letting an outsider make a decision that's going to affect your organization, which I don't know if that's within everyone's comfort zone.
I think if they've been made chair, even if they are an outsider, if people had confidence enough to elect them chair, that in a situation like, break a tie, make a tie, whatever, that if they had confidence enough in them to elect them, that they should have that option anyway. As far as voting on anything else, no. Just my opinion.
So what you're saying, Judy, is a non-duly elected member who has been elected chair would vote, but only in case of a tie.
Or to create a tie.
Yeah. Well, not to create a tie, but only in the case of a tie, right?
Now,
If it's 7-6, let's say.
if it's
Then
7-6,
basically-
then there's no need for them to vote unless they want to create a tie.
But they should be able to create a tie in any case, I don't think.
This is where we're sticking.
You don't think they should be able to create a tie?
If they're not voting, they're not voting. If they're voting in case of a tie, then they can create a tie which allows them to vote. It seems to me. That's double jeopardy reverse.
Are you, I just want to make sure I understand. Are you saying that if it's 7-6, and I'm the chair?
Yeah, 7-4 and 6 against.
Okay, 7-4, 6 against.
Yeah, and you're
I'm the chair.
You're against.
And I'm against. And I'm not duly elected. And okay, let's just imagine. I can vote to create a tie, which means.
And then the motion fails.
And then the motion fails.
Even though it was 7-6 in favor.
Right. Yeah,
That's
I
not
cause
right.
it to fail.
That's not right to my simple mind.
Okay, all right, that's all right. And then if it's a tie, I could vote to, instead of it failing, to make it.
Either way,
win.
yeah. You could make it fail or succeed depending on how you vote.
So I guess I just want to make sure you are okay. You're not okay with me making it a tie and making it fail, but you're okay at being a tie and me making it succeed.
Or fail.
Okay. So you only want for, and this is okay. I really don't care about this, but you are suggesting that the non-duly elected chair only votes if there is a tie.
I would suggest that a non-duly elected or a duly elected chair only vote in the case of a tie.
Well, now, as I understand it, there's really nothing that we can do about the duly elected. Like if they are a chair, if they are duly elected and they're a chair, they already have rights to vote whenever they want to.
Not if they're a chair.
If it's a tie, they do, yes.
No, but before there is a tie, can they vote?
No.
No, that's my point. I mean,
Okay, wait.
House of Representatives, the speaker doesn't vote unless there's a tie, or the Senate.
Okay, let me just make sure I understand this, Larry. So I'm elected from my district to the state executive committee, and I'm elected chair. So I'm a member of the assembly, and I'm elected chair. You're saying that I can't vote unless there's a tie, or?
Correct. And the exception, according to Robert's rules, is if it's by ballot, then they can vote, because that's not disclosing their position. So what this is really all about is preserving objectivity in the role of the chair. So whether they're for something or against something doesn't come into play. So they only, the baseline default is they only vote if there is a tie.
That's why we did it. with them.
To create a tie or to break a tie.
No, just if it's a tie.
Just a break.
So if it's a tie and they abstain, then it fails. So that's the same as voting against it.
Oh, I see.
Or they could vote for it and create a majority.
Now, that's true whether the chair is a duly elected member or somebody who is not a duly elected member. Is that correct?
As the default, that's only in the case of where the presiding officer is an elected member of the body. So unless you have explicitly given an outsider the right to vote, then they can't vote. So if it comes up as a tie, then the motion fails if you don't have that provision to allow them to vote.
So a non-duly elected chair doesn't vote, period, full stop.
Correct. They're just a presiding officer.
Unless we give them that power in the bylaws. Unless we give them that power in the bylaws. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And a duly elected chair, a duly elected person who's a chair votes only in the case of an already existing tie.
Yes.
It's gonna be a fun word salad to put forth.
Oh, Selena.
I kind of think, I think that we only have to make the decision on, do we want to allow a non-duly elected chair to vote or not? I think that's our only decision. And the way that it currently stands is that they only vote if there's a tie. So we have to decide if we want to just leave it the way it is. That might just be easy. If that's how it's been for years, I don't think it's a big major issue. I'm personally okay leaving the way it is. Yes, Larry.
And also, you're just recommending this language to the body. So someone could actually amend this to change it if that's what the body chooses to do when you bring this before them.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is really just about what the committee's recommendation is going to be to the body, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and honestly, there's a lot of stuff that we're doing that really is just the majority of what we're doing is cleanup and inclusion stuff. And to me, this isn't like a killer issue for that we have to. It's not been, as far as I know, it's not something that's been abused or anything like that. It's probably not going to come up that often. But I'm honestly okay either way. But if it if it's not broke, don't fix it sort of thing. Yes, Larry.
Well, the other blessing is that I don't believe you vote by consensus in the assembly. So you're going to actually vote. and either it passes or it fails. So, it's not like you have to come up with a solution that makes everyone in your executive committee happy. You have to, you're proposing something, and then they're going to consider it, and they're going to vote it up or down, or they're going to amend it and vote on it.
Yeah, but we would really like to not put forth things that are going to get voted down.
Yeah, Larry, the dirty
We're
little
gonna
secret
need a
is
lot of amendments.
Well, yeah, that's the life in a democracy.
Right, but I mean, there's some really, I mean, there's some stuff that we are that it's just really important that we get done, and and we're doing our best to try to find consensus.
Yeah, but I mean, the way you're going to present this is that, someone's going to speak to the motion, and you're going to explain the pros and cons of this, and you're going to let the majority decide what they want to do. So, group intelligence, for better or for worse.
Right.
And it's not a big hit if they amend something. I mean, no one should ever take this personally.
I agree.
And, giving a vote to the chair or not giving the vote to the chair, if they're not a member of the assembly, shouldn't be regarded by the chair as a slight. I mean, that's just, they should understand they're not a member of the assembly, and the assembly is not giving them the vote. And so, that's just the way it is. They shouldn't get all bent out of shape because they've been told that. They probably will, but
You never know.
My understanding was, and like I said, it's the way we always operated, that was the way it was supposed to be done. So that's how I never voted unless it was a necessary situation.
Well, I think that's politically the best thing, but anyway, but I apologize to the group, because I'm pretty sure that at the last meeting I said that the chair, if they were a duly elected member of the group, they could vote anytime that they wanted to. I did not realize that they could not. So, all right. Before we let Larry go, are there any other questions for him, or any other clarification that we need to pick his brain about? Okay, hearing none. Larry, thank you so much for being on here. We really, really appreciate you.
my pleasure. I always learn from these things. So thank you for including me.
Thanks for coming.
My
Bye.
pleasure. Bye. Thank you.
You can never
Okay.
think of something whenever somebody's there and you're put on the spot. And then once they're gone 15 minutes later, oh, I should have asked them this.
Right. And I wanted to let you guys know that I told you earlier that Maria Russo was going to be on tonight. I texted her. She just sent me a message a little bit ago that said that she was so sorry. Right before she was about to hop on, she was walking her dog and got stung by something and had an allergic reaction. Please tell the group I'm sorry. I was really looking forward to tonight's presentations, just getting it under control now. I'll just let her know to take, yeah.
Hopefully she had a EpiPen or something close by.
Yeah. Okay, so we are at right at 7:30. I kind of need to do a hard cutoff 8:30. I mean, I'm sorry, at 8 if possible. But so let's kind of open this up to discussion. I think let me just throw this out here. Do we want to just leave this section as is, which basically it currently says that let's see what it says. Let me read it exactly. Can't find it now. Here, okay. Currently, it says if the chair is not a duly elected member. Let me just. I'm sorry. Let me share my screen. Okay. So we have to kind of read between the lines because of where we've kind of played around with a little bit. But the part in black, if the chair is not a duly elected member of the West Virginia State Democratic Executive Committee, we added that prior, may only vote in case of a tie. All right, so that's what the current language is. Now we have played around with it. Say additionally, the chair may only vote to make or break a tie. So we've played around with that language, but the bottom line is the current language says that the chair can only, if they are not a duly elected member, then they can only vote in case of a tie. So let me stop sharing now. What is, are we okay with just leaving that language as is, or changing it to something else? Judy, you're muted, bud.
Sorry, I think I would take the part about making a tie out, and only being able to break a tie.
Which is what it currently is.
Yeah, but it says.
No, currently it says make or break.
I know, but that's in the purple.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I-
I'm sorry, that kind of was where we played around with it last time. We played around with this. Anything in purple was the language that we played around with, but in the current bylaws say if the chair is not a duly elected member of the West Virginia State Democratic Executive Committee, they may only vote in case of a tie. So that bunch that's marked out because we were playing around with it, but that's what the current language in the bylaws says. Okay.
If I go back to this, I'm trying to find where it says in that section that the chair does not have to be a duly elected member of the executive committee. Can someone help me with that? Oh, here it is.
Here we go.
Such officers may or
may not be chosen from duly elected members. Yeah.
Right. So none of those need be duly elected members. Okay.
That's correct.
Well, my preference is to have what Larry suggested, which was to say that someone who's not a duly elected member, a chair who is not a duly elected member, may not vote in the case of a tie. The chair who is a duly elected member can vote in case of, but only in case of a tie. That's my preference.
Okay. So Dottie is the not duly elected, doesn't vote. Okay.
Yeah. as, okay. Now this raises the question of other other people who are elected as officers who are not duly elected. But let's leave that be for right now.
I agree. I agree.
I think the way it stands and the way it's written is that if you're not a duly elected officer, you don't have a vote anyway.
No, that used to be the way it is. They changed it. Any WVSDEC member shall have the right to cast their vote on any question that may come before the committee. And then we suggested adding, with the exception of the voting provisions in section 5 of this article, which are the ones that we put in up here, basically said that they can't vote at the outgoing officers can't vote the new organizational meeting. So yeah, as it stands right now, everybody can vote. All officers can vote. And I agree with Dottie. Let's come back to that. Let's nail down non-duly elected chair. Either they can, I think I'm going to nail it down to two things or throw out two things. And if you hate this, you can throw out something else, but non-duly elected chair does not vote, period, ever. Or non-duly elected chair only votes in case of a tie.
The latter.
The former.
All right, so we got Judy at one, Dottie the other. All right, I'm going to stop my share so I can see people. All right. All right. Who else we got on here? We got Ray and Mac on here. Me. So Ray or Mac, can you give us your sense of this issue?
Mac, you go ahead.
I tend to align a bit closer with Judy's perception, but I'm going to be honest, I don't feel strongly a choice on how to divvy up the power. But if the chair's
I'm sorry, Mac,
some
cut out.
responsibility, that gets reconciled when they're put in that position. So that's the check on that. If we take away that power because we're concerned about anything else, that's our prerogative as an organization. I am not philosophically drawn to any option on this. I don't have a preference.
Okay. Ray?
I'm okay with it. Like I said, it sounds, it's a little bit quirky, a little bit gray area, but I'm okay with the way it is now. I'm okay with it.
With I'm sorry, there's so much confusion. Which way are you okay with?
The current language that
Current language.
they only vote in the event of a tie.
That the non-duly elected member only votes in case of a tie.
Is that correct, Ray?
Yes.
The current language. Okay, yeah. And I agree. My thought is this isn't an issue, and I agree. I will be happy either way. I'm not gonna fuss one way or the other about it. I just think it's been this way for a long time. It's not one of those issues that has come up as being an issue that we feel like we need to focus on reform. I think that there are things in the bylaws that work. I don't feel like we really have to change it. So I am absolutely okay just leaving the language the way it is. The only thing is that I think we can clean up the way it's written and not change the intent of it.
So just to be clear, whether the chair is duly elected or not duly elected, that chair votes only in case of a tie. That's our view. Yes. Silence means consent.
I just want to make sure I understand what you said. So what you said is you believe our consensus is that regardless of whether they're duly elected or not duly elected, the chair only votes in case of a tie.
That's what I said.
And I think the only thing that I would add to that, and this is based on just my this is what I thought that I understood anyway, but Larry mentioned about ballot. If there is a vote that there is a ballot, that a duly elected chair could vote on a ballot.
Yeah.
But that's in Robert's rules. That's not anything that we have to worry about writing in.
No, but we do have ballots from, upon occasion, so it's good, probably good to have that in there in some form.
We did have a ballot this last meeting, and I don't recall the chair voting in that paper ballot.
Yeah, most chairs don't vote unless they have to. They feel like they have to.
Whether by paper ballot or by voice.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
then we kind of talked about that. It's just you want your chair to have be looked at as just basically a fair presiding officer, and so every time that you make your chair pick a side, there are potential problems with that. So most chairs don't choose to do that.
I agree 100%.
Yeah. All right, so let's look at this right here. So we add additionally, if the chair is not a duly elected Senate district member, because we didn't like the just duly elected. We wanted it to be very clarify what that meant. A duly elected Senate district representative, You're
saying elected twice in there.
They are, yeah. Representative. Maybe this should go out.
I don't know if we need to say that. Additionally, the chair may only vote, and that's true regardless of whether they're duly elected or not. Isn't that the case?
No, because of the ballot issue that he mentioned. So if you are a duly elected member of the assembly and your chair, you can vote on a ballot issue.
No, didn't we just say we didn't want the chair to vote on a ballot issue? I'm very confused.
No, I don't think we said we didn't want them to do that. We said that they rarely do it. Like most chairs won't do it because they want to have this impartiality aspect. So, but a duly per Robert's rules, and this is the way it stands now. If you are a duly elected member of the assembly and you're a chair, you can vote on ballot issues and to break a tie in the event of a tie. So that's a given. I don't feel like we need to change that up in any way because that already exists. That's just how it exists. The only thing that I feel like we need to focus on is these people who are not duly elected that are the chair. We just need to clarify that part of it.
And that's where I think that only in the case of breaking a tie. Otherwise, they don't get to vote. if they're not duly elected.
Right. Okay. So I think everybody but Dottie, I think is okay with that.
That's fine. That's not a hill I want to die on.
Okay. All right. But this is what I think that language would look like, unless anybody has another suggestion. Additionally, if the chair is not a duly elected Senate district representative of the West Virginia State Democratic Executive Committee, they may only vote in case of a tie.
No, that I thought that a duly elected Senate representative who was a chair could not vote except in case of a tie. So whether or not they're duly elected or not duly elected, they may only vote in case of a tie, leaving aside the question of ballot.
You're right, Dottie, but there's this earlier in the bylaws, it says that, and also in the DNC charter and bylaws, it says that basically the parliamentary authority of the West Virginia of democratic organizations is Robert's Rules of Order. So the assumption is that everything in Robert's Rules of Order is going to be followed. Like everybody has to follow that procedure. And so we don't have to recreate any of that in our bylaws. Anytime that we add anything into our bylaws, we're superseding Robert's rules, because our bylaws supersede Robert's Rules of Order. So we don't have to put in anything about the duly elected members, because that's already covered in Robert's Rules of Order. What isn't covered in Robert's rules is, well, actually what is covered in Robert's rules apparently is that a non-duly elected chair can't vote, period. And the only way that they can have a vote is if we give them that. When I say we, the state executive committee, give them that power. So that's what I think that we've decided that of course, this is not us deciding, it was just our recommendation. So our recommendation is that we think a duly elected, a non-duly elected chair should only vote in the event of the tie. So and that actually, we're not even really doing anything different, because that's already in there. We've already given them that power, and we're just clarifying the sentence a little bit.
Yeah, but that's fine, except that I think that creates the impression that a duly elected representative who is a chair may vote for all votes. And so I'd like to make it clear, even if it's repetitive of Robert's rules, that whether or not a chair is a duly elected district representative, they may only vote in case of a tie, leaving aside the question of ballots. I don't think it's changing anything. It's just making it explicit so that there isn't any ambiguity later on.
Well, I think there's certainly a case to be made for doing that or not doing that. I agree with you. I like things very, very clear in the bylaws, but the other thing that I worry about is putting things in the bylaw. Once we put something in our bylaws, it then is, open for amendment and change when the best option is just what's in Robert's rules. And if we have a chair and a good parliamentarian who is advising the chair, then that stuff will be, we don't have to worry about that stuff. So I don't know. Matt, do you have a thought on whether it's good or bad to put stuff in bylaws that is already in Robert's rules? And maybe you might want to speak to that in general or speak to this specific issue. I'm not sure.
In my years of doing it, the bylaws are always going to be the shorter of those two documents, which unfortunately, given how the human psyche works, they're always the document that is more likely to get read, but not guaranteed. In all the times I've done this, I have always leaned towards saying things explicitly in the bylaws. I think the one thing that you might want to watch out for in this particular instance, though, is because you are dealing with the concept of a duly elected member, thinking about how putting something in the affirmative can impact a duly elected chair versus the negative of that aspect. Say we have a situation where a chair vacates due to conflict of interest, and we appoint a temporary chair via just say Rule 65 of Robert's Rules of Order. Do we want this to be interpretable as that chair, due to the circumstances of them being in that position, is denied certain rights to facilitate a meeting? And that is where being explicit can come back to bite you, because if you word things uncarefully, you can create scenarios that you're denying rights in situations you don't want them to. I agree with what Dottie's saying, in that I think that it would be helpful to be explicit, but I don't believe this is a situation where it's needed, given the fact that Robert's Rules of Order creates that floor, accounts for all the nuances and exemptions within it, and sort of it's a time and true method. So I think this is one of those situations where I would err against being explicit, in my opinion.
Thank you, Matt. Judy?
What if we, instead of rewording everything, completely refer people to that section of Robert's Rules? Since it is already stated in the beginning of the bylaws that we operate under Robert's Rules of Order. When it comes to the voting of the chair and that kind of stuff, just make a reference to that part of the Robert's Rules of Order. And that way they can look it up themselves.
At that point, you'd have 70 pages of footnotes referencing Robert's Rules of Order.
Yeah, but we're granting the non-duly elected chair a vote, which Robert's Rules of Order doesn't. So we're not following Robert's Rules of Order with respect to a non-duly elected chair. We are following Robert's Rules of Order with respect to a duly elected chair.
Agreed, but once that person has assumed the title of chair, the question is do you want the question of how they assume the chair to affect their ability to facilitate a meeting from it? And normally I would say explicitly, you would want circumstances to be carefully laid out in the bylaws. However, the check on that is the assumption of the chair, a decision by the assembly and its members that they should be taking seriously. If a chair is given a power, they're given that power to facilitate the meeting process as smoothly and efficiently as possible. do we want certain types of chairs to not have full access to that toolbox? And I don't.
Max,
Am I-
I think I didn't make myself clear. I wasn't arguing the point about whether or not duly elected chairs should be able to vote for a tie. I was saying, I was commenting on Judy's suggestion that we simply remove that sentence, additionally, if the chair is not, et cetera, et cetera. And in place of that, we say we are using Robert's Rules of Order with regard to the chair voting. And my comment was that we are not. We are using Robert's Rules of Order with respect to a chair voting when it comes to a duly elected chair. We are not following Robert's Rules of Order when it comes to a chair who is not duly elected, in that they may vote in case of a tie, whereas Robert's Rules of Order says they may not. Excuse me, let me mute myself. I don't know why my phone's ringing.
I'm not sure if he had to take that call or if he's still on there. Dottie, are you, can you continue the conversation, or do you need to take that call? Okay, I'm not sure what to do with that.
I think in the end, once we present it to the committee as a whole, like that one issue that we had to set to the side at the meeting we had in, what was it, May?
May. Mhm.
We couldn't find consensus in the committee on that. I imagine we're going to have some discussion in the committee meeting when it comes to this also.
Well, I mean, I guess this is just not one of our top issues, and we've just spent an enormous amount of time on it. And I don't think I think this issue will come up once in a blue moon, and it's already in there. It's something that has been accepted by the state executive committee for a long time.
I agree with you.
My big issue with it is the duly elected. I felt like we really needed to clarify what duly elected is, because people will interpret that differently, and we don't have a definition of that. But that's my only issue with it. And but I agree with Mac. Go ahead, Mac. Sorry.
No, yeah, I think the point you're making is correct. There is a bit of institutional knowledge connected to the institutional memory connected with the current phraseology, and that was also part of my my hesitancy to go along with making a change to it. And that, I've already talked to a bunch of committee members who have said, you all are changing a lot. How are we supposed to keep up? And so that has kind of weighed in on my mind as well, and that maybe we should be looking at the most effective uses of our changes. And I agree, I don't believe this is a top issue. That's why I didn't feel strongly about it in the beginning. So I think you said everything succinctly, and I agree with you, Selena.
All right. So let's just see where we're at with time. We're almost at 8 o'clock, and I do need to do a kind of a hard stop here. Our next meeting is I think on September the 14th. And there is, stuff that we have talked about, but we had some discussion about. The biggest thing I think is on that we wanted to discuss is this resolutions committee. We wanted to make sure that they could meet and make the recommendations and get information out to the state executive committee. And we felt that it was important to have a mechanism for a resolution that was not adopted by the resolutions committee for recommendation, that there would be a mechanism for somebody to bring that forth from the floor. We wanted to bring that process in, and so we've included some of that. None of that is set anything hard. It's in purple that we can look at. I'd like everybody to go in and comment on it. The one thing that I think that Bob really was wanted to make sure is that there would be enough time and for the resolutions to go out to the state executive committee. I agree with that, but it also kind of messes with our notice situation. And so what I feel like we need to do, and I'm not opposed to it at all, is changing the notice for that committee meeting so that they don't have to give 2 weeks notice to meet. Because if they get a notice that there's a regular meeting, they get a 2-week notice. They need to quickly notice there. Now, hopefully there would be communication with the state chair ahead of time, but in case there's not, they need to have time to notice their meeting, have their meeting, and get information out. So we're going to have to change that, allow for them to have a different notice. So anyway, I think that is something to be really important for people to look at. And the last thing that I wanted to point out to you guys, let me share my screen again. We had talked about, addressing caucuses and councils. And this is the information I was able to get. Ron was able to help me get this. This is from the DNC Executive Committee guidelines for operating caucuses of the DNC. I'm not saying we have to mirror this at all. I'm just saying this is some information that we can look at as we do our work. To see, how we, want to strengthen our bylaws related to our caucuses. And we have talked about, I do not have their guidelines for councils yet. I have requested them, but have not received them. And then when I get them, I'll make sure that you have access to them. But you can access this through that agenda. And if you can't do today's agenda, there's a link. If you can't access it, Judy, I'm going to let me know and I can send that to you. So I think that will help guide us when we focus on that part of it. I mean, at least it's some information that we have.
Yeah,
so, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I apologize, I interrupted.
You're fine.
I think Bob and Debbie and
Maria.
Thank you. I was trying to remember who the other person was. I think that they would like to have a little bit of input on this particular subject.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We want to make sure that everybody's voice is heard. So
great. I agree. Okay. So we will meet again on September 14th. And Dottie, you're back. I think we sort of lost communication with you just a little bit. So
I was hearing everything.
okay. We weren't sure. We were trying.
Sorry.
We weren't sure. Okay. All right. So if there would be a motion to adjourn, we can wrap up tonight.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Before I adjourn, I just want to thank Katie. And Corey is on tonight from the West Virginia Democratic Party staff. They always make things so much easier by handling all of the behind the scenes stuff and make sure that it's recorded, that it goes on YouTube, it's live streamed. What Mac was saying earlier is about, we have a very involved state executive committee. We want that. We want them to know what's going on. We want them to have input. and having these meetings recorded, and that people can participate live and get back with us and say, hey, I really like this, I don't like this. That's all part of democracy, and I think that makes our party stronger, and I'm glad that it happens, and having our folks doing the behind the scenes stuff is just a really important piece of doing that. So thank you guys for doing that, and to the members of this committee, thank you so much for your time and attention to these issues. We really, really appreciate you. And obviously we appreciate the guests that we had on tonight that really give us more information. The more information we have, the better it is. So thank you all so much. And with that, I call this, well, I should probably take a vote. All in favor of adjourning this meeting, please indicate by saying aye.